Hello there, my fellow myth and fantasy nerds. My name is Tanner, and I'd like to welcome you back to my YouTube channel. Sorry I haven't been uploading for a while. Things have gotten a little crazy lately, but I'm back and ready to make YouTube videos for you. Now that I've got all that out of the way, for this week's video, I decided to do something a little bit different. Instead of telling an ancient myth many millennia old, I decided that I'm going to branch out into fairy tales. Now, before I tell you guys the stories we all know and love, I figured I would tell you the tale of Prince Lindworm, a more obscure fairy tale from Scandinavia. Now, before I begin, you guys are probably wondering, what in the world is a lindworm? Well, long story short, a lindworm is a type of dragon with no wings, a long serpentine body, and only two clawed forelimbs. Also, as with my mythology retellings, linked to the playlist up in the cards and in the description, I will keep this story as close to the original as possible, but I will also be sprinkling in my own little creative license when and where it's needed. So make sure you leave a like on this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe down below, since that always helps. And without further ado, here is the tale of Prince Lindworm. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, a young woman was taking a walk through the forest. As she strolled through the woods, she came upon an old woman, dressed in robes as green as the leaves on the trees. "Please, child, can you spare a drink of water for an old woman?" The younger woman, who was a kind, gentle, compassionate soul, gladly obliged, and gave the old woman a drink of water. As the old woman drank her fill, she noticed the younger woman had a troubled look on her face. "My child, I sense your heart is very heavy. Why don't you tell me what's troubling you?" The younger woman did so, for she felt as though she could trust the woman. "I am the queen of a kingdom not far from here, you see. My husband, the king, and I have ruled over our subjects with grace and honor. Despite this, we have not been able to bear a child, an heir to the throne of our kingdom. We have been visited by the best physicians and herbalists in the land, but no one has been able to help us, and the cradle we had built is still empty." "Ah," the older woman said, "I see. Well, my dear queen, since you have done me a kindness by giving me a drink, I shall do you a kindness, for I am knowledgeable in the magical arts. Now tell me, do you have a garden, perchance?" "Yes, a large one, tended to by the best gardeners in our kingdom." "Do you also possess a large jug, one with two handles?" "Yes, one passed down from one family to the next. Why do you ask these questions, though?" "Very simple, my queen," the old woman replied. "What you must do is take the jug and set it upside down in the farthest corner of your garden. Leave it there in that state until the next morning. When you return, two roses will have sprung up underneath the jug, one with petals as red as blood, the other with petals as white as snow. One of these roses must be eaten by you if you wish to bear a child. Eat the red rose for a son, and the white rose for a daughter. One word of caution, however. You must not eat both roses at once, for if you do, terrible things will befall your kingdom. The queen didn't know what to think of this strange information, but after talking to her husband, the king, they decided to try it, since nothing else happened at that point. So the queen took the large two-handled jug and placed it upside down in the farthest corner of her garden. The next morning the queen went back out, and, sure enough, the two roses had grown under the jug, one with petals as red as blood, and the other with petals as white as snow. It was at this moment the queen paused, trying to decide which rose to eat. "If I bear a son," she said to herself, "at some point he may have to fight in the wars. However, if I have a daughter, at some point she will be married to a lord of a neighboring kingdom. Either way, I may lose my child." After a few minutes' pause, she decided to eat the white rose. As soon as the flower touched her lips, she was overwhelmed with a flavor too exquisitely delicious to put into words. As soon as the first rose was swallowed, she immediately plucked the second rose and ate that as well, forgetting the old woman's warning. Time passed, and as the old woman said she would, the queen became pregnant, and, while her husband was out on a campaign, she gave birth to two children. One, a healthy baby boy with flaming red hair, and the other, a lindworm with glittering scales as white as the snow. As soon as it was born, the lindworm disappeared, and the queen decided to not reveal it to her husband or the prince until such a time as it was needed. Many years later, the prince had grown into a fine young man, with hair like spun copper and eyes that sparkled like sapphires. Every eligible maiden in the nearby kingdoms wanted to court him, and soon the prince was ready to find a girl to marry. He was riding to the nearby kingdom to meet and court the princess, when all of a sudden he found his path blocked by a large snow-white lindworm. The lindworm hissed at him, its emerald-like eyes staring into the prince's own, and soon the prince heard the creature speak to him. "A bride for me before a bride for you," the creature said. Terrified, the prince wheeled his horse around and rode back to the palace. When he got back to the castle, he met with the king his father and the queen his mother, and told them what he saw and heard. The king was perplexed at this new development, but then the queen spoke up. She told both the king and the prince about everything: the witch, the flowers, and the lindworm. She finally said, "My son, the lindworm, your brother, is unfortunately correct. You see, he is technically 10 minutes your senior, and therefore it is his right to be married first." The king sent a messenger to the neighboring kingdom to the west, asking for a prince to marry his son, though he left out the fact that it was the Lindworm. In a few weeks, the marriage was arranged, and soon the princess married the Lindworm. Unfortunately for her, the Lindworm devoured her as soon as they got to the newlywed suite. After that, the Lindworm turned and asked to be married again, since apparently devouring the bride also counts as annulment. The king then sent another messenger to the neighboring kingdom, this time to the east, and asked for the princess there to marry his son, though again he decided not to say which son. The cycle repeated again a second time, with the Lindworm getting married to the princess, and then effectively annulling the marriage by devouring the bride. At this point, the king had grown fearful. Twice the princess of the neighboring kingdom had been betrothed to the Lindworm, and twice the princess of the neighboring kingdom was devoured by the Lindworm. Both neighboring kingdoms were, understandably, outraged at this development, and both were preparing for war if the Lindworm wasn't destroyed. Yet the Lindworm demanded another bride. However, this time the king didn't want another kingdom in an uproar, so he brought in his head gardener. "Now, you have an eligible daughter, do you not?" he asked the gardener. "I do." "Good. We would like this maiden to marry our royal son, the Lindworm, even if it means certain death for her." When the gardener heard this, he was understandably distraught, and when he told his daughter this news, she was also distraught. In order to clear her head, she decided to take a stroll through the woods. As she walked, she soon came across an old woman dressed in robes as green as the leaves on the trees. "Please, my child, can you spare a drink of water for an old woman?" The younger woman, being a kind, compassionate soul, happily obliged, giving the old woman a drink. As the older woman drank, she noticed the young maiden was downcast. "Now, my dear, why do you look so morose?" "I am the child of the head gardener of the nearby kingdom. The kingdom has been plagued by a Lindworm, white as snow, who wishes to marry a princess. The first two marriages have ended with the Lindworm feasting on his brides, and the kingdoms on either side of us are preparing for war unless the Lindworm is destroyed. Now I'm set to be married to the Lindworm, and I don't want to be devoured." The young maiden sobbed into her dress, and the older woman comforted her. "There, there, child," she said to the maiden. "This is not your fault. I warned the queen she shouldn't eat both the roses, but sadly she didn't listen. But do not worry. I am knowledgeable in the magical arts, and I will tell you how to solve both your problem and the problem of the kingdoms at the same time." "Really?" the maiden said, looking up from her sobbing. "How can I?" "Simply do exactly as I tell you, and all will be well." The old woman instructed the maiden on what to do, and right after the wedding, but before she walked into the honeymoon suite, she put 10 dresses on her body, and she had the servants bring up 2 buckets, one filled with milk, the other filled with lye, as well as a whip. As soon as the Lindworm saw her, he was taken aback. "What are you doing in all those dresses? Why not take them off?" "Why not take off your scales?" the bride replied to him. So they agreed to do it at the same time. The bride peeled off one of her dresses, while the Lindworm shed a layer of scales. The Lindworm was dismayed, however, when he saw that his bride only peeled off one dress, but still had 9 on. "Why are you still wearing all those dresses? Why not take them off?" "Why not take off your scales?" the maiden replied. So again the bride peeled off one dress, while the Lindworm peeled off a layer of scales. On and on this went, until finally the bride was in her last dress. Prince Lindworm, however, had been reduced to a small, helpless creature, weak, exhausted, and, after peeling off 9 layers of scales, understandably tender. As soon as she saw her chance, the bride took the whip, dipped it into the bucket filled with lye, and whipped Prince Lindworm with it. This, understandably, caused the Lindworm to yelp and bellow in pain. After this, she took the bucket of milk and dumped it onto him, and, though he spluttered and coughed, he found his wounds to be soothed by the milk. The bride then took the final step the witch had taught her. She took the Lindworm in her arms and squeezed him in a tight yet warm embrace. As soon as she took this final step, she felt her husband hugging her back, and his arms did not feel scaly and cold as she expected, but warm, smooth, and unmistakably human. She looked up, and she saw, instead of a Lindworm, a very human prince, with eyes the color of emeralds, and his hair as white as snow, the only reminder of what he was before. From that day forward, Prince Lindworm, his wife, his brother, and everyone else celebrated the breaking of the Lindworm's curse. The 3 kingdoms never went to war, and they all lived happily ever after. And there we have it. That was the tale of Prince Lindworm. If you liked this video and you want more, please leave it a like and subscribe down below so you don't miss any new ones. Also, if you have any other ideas for any future videos, please leave your thoughts in the comments down below and who knows, it might just happen. Oh, did I mention that I'm now officially on TikTok? If you guys want to go over there and follow me, it is at Blue Pantheon, same way it's spelled here. Alright, well, that's all the time I have for this video, so I'll see you all next week with a brand new one. See you guys then.